10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you all for coming. I'm Reverend Steve Adkins. I'm the current associate pastor. It's my distinct pleasure this morning to introduce the presenter of the morning lesson. First, I'd like to ask you to silence your cell phones unless you're medical or law enforcement personnel. This morning, the presenter is going to be Joy Sagar. He's been out here for more than a decade that I know of. He's also on our board of trustees, so he's doing double duty this morning, seeing how we're doing and being part of what we're doing. So he's going to speak on your spiritual path and how to enhance that and work with it. So without further ado, there will be a time at the end for question and answer, so please ask questions. That's what the time's for. Thank you for being here. Please welcome Reverend, Joy Sagar.
Thank you for the message. Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to make sure my voice is clear and you can hear me fine. Okay, wonderful. It is a privilege to be here. And this is our Lyceum portion or a Sunday school portion for adults, grown-ups. And I hope nobody is grown up enough to take something in. I'm growing up on a daily basis, but I'm staying where I am. It keeps me lighthearted. So in preparation of this morning, as I was preparing earlier on, I just kept going in subjects that are exciting to talk about. And then there were subjects that are just simple-hearted. So somewhere the Spirit led me to the simple-hearted subject. So we will go with there. But before I get into the big part of the conversation, I would like to say I will be using the book from White Eagle's teachings. Its title is Beautiful Road Home. And before we get into this conversation, I will let you know about White Eagle just a little bit more. So I usually, when I'm up here speaking, I always have to keep my mind, the terms and the words we use are woven into each other, but they are also distinct in their meaning. So just as a refresher, I'll be talking about 3 words and their definitions as dictionary.com has provided me, and then we will go from there. So the first word is spirit, and the definition from there is the principle of conscious life, the vital principle in humans, animating the body or mediating between the body and the soul. The second word is spiritual, defined as spiritual, of relating to or consisting of spirit as distinguished from the physical nature. And the last definition is spiritualism, the belief or doctrine that the spirits of the dead surviving after the mortal life can communicate with the living through the mediums or otherwise. And I just keep reminding these 3 words to myself because sometimes when we talk and communicate or we are discussing things or sitting in a session or a classroom, these words go in and out like, without knowing they're flying, but they are there. But the awareness is there, all interwoven is there. And now the fascinating part is as I picked up the book, it says Beautiful Road Home. And in my last, I want to say 3 years of my work as a medium, as a professional, my mingling with the other side is becoming a little bit more, I don't want to say it's purely refined, but it's becoming better. And some parts of the communication are becoming a little bit educational for me than they can be for the recipient, even the information is provided. But my awareness within that is slightly different. So once again, when I speak from the heart. So this is inspirational in some ways. So please pay attention. So this White Eagle is a channeled entity that has been brought forward in classes and gatherings through the mediumship of Grace Cook. And Grace Cook is an English medium, and they have captured the lectures and translated in the books, categorized them in the readable topics. The other very popular book from this series is The Quiet Mind. And I feel these two books are very intriguing if you are in that spiritual journey, not as a spiritualist specifically, but more on a spiritual level. So the journey through spiritualism still leads to that spiritual pathway. So it is not separate, good or better or different from the other, but it is a journey nonetheless, is there. So this book has 12 chapters, but I've been directed to 3 or 4 of them. So I will read a passage and then we'll talk about that. Inevitably, regardless of anybody sitting here, we're all on a journey at the minimum, right? Trying to make the best of today and perhaps improve the tomorrow. Whatever is in the past is already done. It cannot be redone in some capacity, but it can always be taken as a stage for learning to what that was, right? So it's a journey of one or the other kind. Now, those that are really fascinated or ambitious in a different value, that is fine too, because that is a journey of its own. You know, if you want a materialistic gain or if you want to improve your quality of life, nonetheless, it's still a journey. And the part of that inspiration is the first chapter that I was directed to is called Master of Matter. So matter in physics is matter. This is a matter, I'm a matter, you're a matter, microphone is a matter, everything is made up of matter. That's just basic physics is there. But as this channel writing reads, I will read the first couple of paragraphs here. Truth is within you. It takes no rise from outer things. Whatever your mind may believe, there is an innermost center in you, all where truth abides in fullness. If you allow that inner light to guide you away from foolishness and belief in wrong values, then you will indeed be responding to truth. And having found truth, remember to have faith in that truth to guide you every step of your journey through life. Are you tired of white eagle bidding you? Keep on keeping on. Believe us, it is the only way, because if you do not, you waste time running around corners and presently find yourself in a cul-de-sac. In other words, going in circle. Keep looping there. Keep quietly on and remember that you have been given a particular piece of work because you are the only one who can do that work. So as I was introduced to these 2 paragraphs from this book, once again, to refresh my own focus on my journey, and a part was that is little small nudges like this are alone enough sometimes to just trigger that little worm inside the head to say where we're moving on. So if you have put yourself in a pursuit and if your life is different than somebody else, but yet to realize you're a matter and you have the ability to fine tune its vibrational importance. And a lot of the spiritual work or the spiritual journey or even a human journey is refinement to get better from where we were in any given time and space. So that enjoyment of improvement continues from that perspective. What I was enjoying about this is keep on keeping on. I feel like it's a complicated phrase because sometimes we understand to keep on keeping on means keep going at things even if it's not working, wanting the change to happen. But the keep on keeping on, I feel, simply means if you've done your best, you've had the fullness of your commitment to what you could have participated with, it's time to find another way or keep moving on beyond that point. And a part of this recognition for me was because I'm in a phase of this time of the year where I am analyzing everything about the last year, the possibilities, potential opportunities gained and missed. And that was just finally reminding us like, okay, you've done enough. It's time to go to the next thing or take a different step. And that part was very intriguing. And it just caressed my soul in my own way, reading like, okay, got the message. And sometimes that's all we need is a small nudge to say, come on, little one, move on. And I think that's the part what I enjoyed with there. The next paragraph reads, when you are doing your work, you ready for this? This one is very complicated. When you're doing your work, do it easily. Now, how many of us have really moved past this point? You know, do it easily. Do your best, but happily and quietly, and let it be a joy, not a burden. Right? And once again, we're in such a different place in our lives and time continuum that we really definitely complicate things. Be happy, feel loving, and all things will work together for good. If God wants you to make a change, He will make it for you. If there is no indication and nothing new is thrust before you, you can quite happily keep on, quietly getting joy out of life. So once again, that was another reinforcement for me was to just, okay, I will listen to this, and today is going to become my whole different focus point to see where I'm wanting to push myself into this year, and just embrace my own philosophy, that path of least resistance to let things happen. Don't push if it is not necessary. And I'm just saying that. So in a common man's way, not if you're not a spiritual or you don't find yourself to be more spiritual than somebody else, or there's always a line of demarcation, but it's an internal thing. Once again, what you do for yourself is the only valid truth for you. Everything else is somebody else's journey. So that complication can be eased by saying, I'm doing my part. This is my path, and I'm just going to stay with it as best possible. And Johnny over there is doing their path. There's a fictitious Johnny over here on this side. There's a Johnny. I know there's John over there, but there's a Johnny. He's doing his part, and he's going to carry on into his journey in his own way. And that's why we are unique. But I'm moving on to the next chapter, which was taken to hearing the voice within. And the first paragraph is slightly larger, but I'll read it anyways. To find your truth, you must experience it in your soul. Now, a lot of confusion about soul is, where does it exist? It's somewhere in here within the spirit, or the spirit is a part of the soul, and there's a lot more layers to it. But experience it in your soul, for me, just meant to just experience within yourself, right here at your heart, and your heart's always there to tell you if it went to the right place or not. You can read hundreds of books or study the religions of all times and find that all of them have one common point, one common denominator, and this is love, which is another word for light or soul illumination. So soul holds spirit, spirit holds love, and love just transmutes everything. And a part of this little aha was, once again, do everything with love, but do it easily, makes it more simplified. If you've given it what it needs, and that you've nudged it along to the right way. How many of us have made a little small paperboard on a rainy day and tried to scoot it over to the flowing water? I've done that many a time. Where I grew up, there was a lot of time the water would get lodged in the streets, and we would make paper boats, and we will compete with each other. But that simplistic way of life, in your own version, you've done simple things, something like that, to keep it simple. And that is a wonderful thing. To realize the soul illumination, you have to shut away the clamor of the lower mind. To become humble, very simple. Now, part of that is, if we understand other philosophies and traditions of shamanism, there's a lower mind, middle mind, and the upper mind is there. And for me, I was just trying to struggle to how to put it in simple words. The lower mind means don't get caught up in the materialistic channel of world, where our focus becomes just so superficial or shallow. Dig a little bit deeper to go into the middle or the higher part of mind. And for me, I'm just doing my best to translate in what it means to me. Then imagine that you come into a temple to worship God. Now, God is in you, but God is also outside of you. So how do you separate yourself from the one next to you, or what you're sitting on, because that's also a part of the God essence, because it's holding you in a space at this given time. God is speaking to you both through nature and through your fellow beings, and in your inmost spirit. Through every experience, everything that happens in your life, God is speaking to you. God is your teacher, so think of God as being in your heart. God is actually here within your heart. In other words, the higher aspect of you is God. Slightly complicated because we have to use discernment, we have to use comparison, we have to live life, we have to be here, there, deciding things, what is the best for the group, community, etc., etc. So this has a little place of what is mine versus what becomes the part of the consciousness of the group, it can bleed into that little space of confusion. But if your heart is in the right place, if you feel that in your soul, it speaks to you, then it's your eternal sense of owning that space and journey for yourself. So in the journey of the spiritual path, as the topic was introduced, is to understand your matter, your makeup, our bodies, the way they are presented is very important. And I would say, even if we are sensitive, mediums, healers, light workers, whatever your experience is, you have to understand your makeup. You have to understand your own matter, how it works for you. That's the basic step, how it works for you. How it works for somebody else or how it results for somebody else is a whole different construct of thing. But how it works for you, you gotta know your matter. Beyond that part is that listening skill or that ability to feel what you're feeling within your matter is the very important part of that step of the spiritual path. The next chapter that I'm leading up to is the power of love. Once again, I will try to keep it at the minimum reading, but I'll have to read. Love is the most profound secret of the universe. It is the beginning of life. Indeed, it is life itself. Its seeds lies within every soul, although many incarnations must pass before the majority of the souls discover their own secret, the power which lies within their own being. Now, that paragraph was primordial because in my last 3-4 years of work, that's where I'm coming up. I keep sort of bouncing into this expression is, it is not just this lifetime that we've gained what we have today. It has come from many different dimensions, many different incarnations of different kinds, different forms that has culminated into this consciousness that we're experiencing today. So did we become wiser, older, maturer today? No, it has taken time. But in working with the other side as a medium or a healer, that consciousness goes because they are having their own journey over there. They come to us for communication to give us point of relevance, but they are in pursuit of their own journey. They are carrying on the other side, reading more material than it's provided to us humans. So they have a whole different library system. And I used to fuss about it, like, really? Because I felt everything is available instantly, but no, you have to fine tune whatever that draw is, because going into the other side is also inviting you to pick and choose where you want to be next. There's an optional spaces there. So not every soul is returning as an incarnate. The other souls are going into a different galaxy or different dimension to wherever that trajectory is for them. So coming back to this life is not the only option. There are more options available. And 1 or 2 sessions for me, there have been spirits that have spoken is, we are here just to help these people, but we're going in a different space. So that's, once again, that's my educational aha is like, okay, should I just think this is a fanciful thinking mind, or where this is going? But they've come back to reiterate that message. And once again, when I stumbled upon this reading this morning, as I'm reading through this book, I'm like, okay, it makes sense. Where we are, it's a sum total. So the part of that spiritual path is whatever we are layering in this lifetime, emotionally, intellectually, knowledge-wise, wisdom-wise, it's going to give us the trajectory to wherever we're heading next. So instead of saying this is the sum total of claiming everything, how about this is only a launching pad or a springboard to that next thing? And we never know where we're going to end up until we get there. But the joy or that little interest in taking hold of where we are, our emotions, our journey, our relationship quandary and dynamics, they all get resolved as we move into this aspect. Like, this is the springboard. And I've said that many times in other speaking and talks. I keep finding myself, this is the prep school. So prep now, don't wait till you graduate. Prep while you can. At the present time, the earth appears to you to be chaotic, but remember that what happens to be evil is a tester of the human spirit, can quicken the growth of the light within, the light which is love. We don't really refer to the term or evil in pursuit of that, but what about, let's give it a little gentler spirit. Any experiences that don't sit well with us, trauma, somebody said anything harsh to us, somebody gave a strong opinion or directed us in not the kind way, can go all in that broad category of that. But what about that? How many of us have really experienced in some capacity the trauma has really catapulted us into a whole different growth process for ourselves? Strength, the determination, the courage, everything is unlocked by a one simple trauma if you are in that space for yourself. Even if you take it as simple as a financial hardship, if you're really paying attention, if you're listening to it, you will not make that mistake again. You will find a way to bounce away from it. But all the more attention is you have to pay attention where you are, what it's trying to tell you or teach you. And a part of that is I've had my own set of small setbacks and traumas. And every time they drag me down, all I keep in mind is this is a catapult, this is a slingshot. It's about to launch me somewhere. I have no idea where I'm going to end up, but definitely going to be on a little higher tangent. So I keep allowing it to happen until it's time to release. And once again, God has a plan, like they said earlier. It will launch it at the right timing. So trust in that divine timing. So when you're in your spiritual path, a lot of times I've read in many social media posts and articles of psychological nature that our experiences are opening our awakening, or it's releasing our awakening, sometimes a little at a time, sometimes all at once. So life gives us options to keep moving on forward. And you will be interested as I will read this next chapter, which is going to be wonderful, as you will listen to this. I will go to this immediately, the second paragraph. I will not talk about the first one. You know, my children, the enlightened ones of all times have found this truth. They have found the inner secret, this beautiful shining jewel within the lotus of the heart chakra, the shining jewel of the truth. And this chapter is called The Road to Joy. And I'm not reading it because of my name. It's just there. We heard a younger brother say, but we have a mind, white eagle, and our mind demands to know the reason. Why? Why is the eternal question that material mind, my son, my daughter, you have a right to know, and you will know when you look in the right way and in the right direction for the answer to your question. So I'm pretty sure, like me, many of us have said, why me? Or why this is happening to me? What did I do to deserve this experience or this behavior? So I'm just going on a very simplistic term, but when I'm on my spiritual pathway, something will trigger to refine my processes. And then I have to question is why? And I give a very wonderful, silly example. As a student, when we come up, we have to practice with audience. That 1 week, your clairvoyance is right on point till you come up for a demonstration or public participation is off. Other channels are moving, something else is working there. And you're like, why you have to do this? I was just so confident in my ability, I will see everything. But it shifts on you. But once again, the spiritual path or even a human path will throw things at you to see how you adapt to it. And that's the part of the beauty of a spiritual path is how do we keep adapting to that spiritual or the growth we are having in that time. Now I will read the first paragraph. You are living today in the age of the mind when humanity is worshiping the power of the mind. You do not realize that when you worship the mind, you are worshiping something which can destroy your body and soul and can destroy the very planet. You see, children of the earth, all truth comes from the spirit, but not everything which comes into the mind comes from the spirit. Only when humanity recognizes that within the heart chakra lies the shining jewel of the truth and will submit to the guidance of the spirit within, will it find truth and happiness. This next couple of sentences is very important. The guidance within, which you call intuition, and the way it's printed in dash tuition from within, can then unfold beautifully and reveal to you your God-given, God-like powers. And once again, my little nugget of simple teaching was in dash tuition. That's right here. And a lot of times, we as professionals will find people come to us, and a good part of that time is they just are using us as a sounding board as to reaffirm whatever they're already feeling in their own spaces, to hear it from an external source, validating their own journey or their own listening abilities for themselves, which is perfectly fine. But also at the same time, We all have intuition, little ones, big ones, large ones, small ones, mediocre ones, everybody has intuition. And just like that, intuition comes in different shapes and sizes. Once again, we have to pay attention. So what about these writings? What about spiritualism and this pathway? So I will break it down to what our platform of education is. The journey of a medium, if you're a spiritualist or not, we're not going there. But if you're working with spirit or the afterlife or the continuity of life, the finer the medium or the matter is, the easier is the communication that flows. So if you see this as a selfingly placement, if I have to fine tune this other things, let me fine tune this channel. Because I am, my body, my matter is the conduit where the information flows. So I do have a job. I do have other hobbies and interests like all of us. I have friends, I have places to go and things to see and things to conquer within myself. So my life is not set up any different than you, but it's definitely mine to own. And that ownership is a big thing, is there, right? I will share this very simply. My father was very fascinated by keeping his shoes polished. And us kids had the job, we took turns in doing that. And it was a thing of joy. Once again, that appeasement between a father and a child is going on. But also at the same time, he liked this shoe polish, shine, and they came from different textures and combinations. So you had to keep in mind, you're not blending things up. But his shoes would last very long. And then I realized because I did it so much, I didn't have no interest in polishing my own shoes. And what I found is if you don't give the care to anything that's in your possession, it goes away if you don't give it even a little tiny amount of TLC. And it's a very simple thing. You know, if you don't use a skill, it will become not so skillful for you when you're wanting to use it. So the practice makes perfect. So the body is that instrument. If you don't give the nurturing it needs, or the care or acknowledgement it deserves, it will go the way it is going to go, right? And a part of that persuasion for me is that little simple analogy of shoe. I stopped buying leather shoes. I only have one pair of leather shoes so that I don't have to polish it. There's a way to find a way to keep things simple and easy so that it doesn't become complicated. And that's a part of my journey is the spirituality is really not such a complicated thing. Keep it simple. It moves within you. It's almost like a river going through its banks. It finds a way. It can only stay put for so long. It is a moving organism. It moves through you. Wherever it needs to go, it will find its way. Is there. So we'll talk about this in a question form. What is your spiritual path? I really am not seeking your answer because an internal dialogue. What is your spiritual path? Would you like to take some time in your own peace and quiet to break down the things, specifically that things that are not moving within you anymore? Anything that's serving the higher good for you, please let it go on. Let it be productive. Let it be the positive part of you. But that very thing that is not moving, especially for the last year, even more importantly in the last 2 years, if you're still feeling stuck, maybe loosen it up to let it pass through your own journey in that part. And see if it moves within you, if it moves in a different direction, if it expresses itself in a different form. And I say this with kindness because a lot of times we understand, or people understand, the expression of mediumship or demonstration of mediumship is a very cookie cutter formula. I just got a question from somebody as an inquiry is, what do you cover? And that's all I had to say, like, this is not a cookie cutter formula. And a part of that is, once again, our lives are not like that. We give it a society, a sociological construct of how it needs to go, but it really is not. Because I can say from all of you very confidently, we planned certain things and they didn't go the way we thought they were going to go. And here we sit today. But a part of these writings are, this was written in 1992. And even going back so many years, if we think of that phrase, the world is changing and the mind is making it more complicated. It's so true. The imagination is very powerful, but is also a powerful co-creator. It will manifest itself the way the mind travels, the thought travels. It will create it for you. So in your spiritual path, once again, please take some time. Where you are is a beautiful place. Where you need refinement, you know it already. Let your heart, let your spirit guide your way into that space. But remember, and I will say this with all kindness, the soul is a bigger umbrella where spirit is held. And the soul is a bigger part of an oversoul. That is a very complicated subject to cover in short time. I am not capable of even starting on that part, but I do understand the soul has its own progression. When you get into that space, it has a journey of its own. So to be inspiring for yourself, I have to be inspiring first for just for me, let alone for, there are shadows in this room. But anyhow, I have to be inspiring to myself. But once again, see, this is a good example of that little fleeting mind. It went where the attention needed at that moment. So in our spiritual path, there will be this distraction, but the ability to come back to it is a very beautiful thing. Any questions for me at this point? Yes, please.
You know, how I, fit things with ease, like how different. 25 years ago, when I started doing readings, I would be nervous and upset and worried, is spirit gonna show up? And now, I just sip some tea, listen to music, do a client, sip some tea, listen to music, do a client. It just, I didn't realize until you said that, it's really become an easy, joyous flow.
Right. And there's a beautiful, there's a vantage point from where I heard that it's almost like developing a muscle reflex. You know, then when it's happening, if you know the back hand, hand knows where it needs to go. It becomes a reflex. But a part of that is, you're very right, Eileen, because it's just become second nature. The more you become fluid with it, the more easy it's to express. You know, some of our people would say that things just blurt out of us, but there's a mechanism to it because we're in that space, and it's such an enjoyable thing. Once again, it's a beautiful place to be. Any other comments or questions? Yes, please.
You've done a great job of speaking about how the spiritual path works, how to stay on it, but what do you think the purpose of our spiritual path is?
Can I address it that way?
Sure.
I believe the path of the spiritual purpose is to have a deeper, stronger connections within ourselves. Because if we are expressing or using the spiritual path to express externally, I think we're missing a point. So the spiritual, I find, for my personally speaking, the spiritual path leads deeper, more to the internal quest for who I am or the finer parts of my own discovery. I hope that answers the question. Thank you. Any other comments? Questions? Cynthia? The quiet mind. To quiet that curiosity, you will have to read that book.
That was well played.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your, yes, ma'am. Okay.
That there's a difference between happiness and joy.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and then I was operating on desire, not happiness or joy. So I decided for past years to start with joy. And when I'm having a hard time deciphering, sometimes joy is really obvious, you know, but sometimes I'm having a hard time deciphering where I'm getting my joy from. Is it love? Is it happiness? Is it positive?
I will share from my own two shoes, because roughly about 4 or 5 years, I had the same inquiry in my mind. And what I discovered through reading, and I read spiritual texts and what the philosophers were saying, so that the breakdown was happiness has a shelf life. Joy is eternal. Anything that brings you happiness, you have to ask yourself, does this thing has a shelf life? If it does, then it stays in that happiness box. If it's an eternal thing, then it's a joy. Nobody can take the joy away, like they say. Once you have it for life. And that's the difference, or that's the separation, that little fine separation. And all those teachers and philosophers said that, but I understood if it's a tangible thing, a car brings a happiness. For me, a camera and a lens brings me a happiness, but it has a shelf life. When it gets obsolete or is no longer usable, I have to look for a replacement that brings me a happiness. But the idea of photography or capturing subjects, that connection is a thing of joy. So the camera will go away, the computer will burn and crash and die. But when I was there in that moment, taking that bird in flight or that alligator munching on his breakfast, that is a more of a permanent image. Still not as pure as joy, but it's almost there. So shelf life is a joy. And once again, if you enjoy a food group, when you're eating, you have a sense of happiness, but it goes away after a little time. Then you have to replace that happiness with something different. But if you had a wonderful communion with family and friends gathering, those memories, the feelings become a little bit more permanent. They are not phasic. They don't have a phase. So that's the thing. If it's a joyful thing, it'll stick with you for a long time. And time, those philosophers said, once you get into knowing your soul, or you understand where that is the purest joy, because you are very close to the consciousness of God. So that's the bigger part of the pure joy. Thank you for your question. And once again, I appreciate everybody's time. Do you have a question? Please.
One of the things that you said today was when you don't know what to do, apparently, don't do anything else, which is something that I'm struggling with. I should we had a session with you. And one of the things that I said to you at the time was, I'm sort of removing myself in the situation because I don't know what to do. And I just thought it was interesting that you said pretty much the same thing today. You know, God will let you know what you need to do when the time is right.
Absolutely. It's not in my time, it's in the divine time. But third time is a charm. Thank you for being here and listening to this talk.
Thank you, Joy, for explaining a difficult subject very well. And thank you all for being here. The church service starts at 10:30. Dr. Reverend Suzanne DeWeese, our pastor, is going to be presenting that lecture, that service. So please stick around and we'll see you then. Thank you again.